All right. Happy Monday, Celeste.
Hello, welcome to another week where we are trying to change the way the world sells and markets to
In
buy.
hospitality, right?
Oh,
Isn't that a different bird altogether?
totally a different bird because in some industries, whether you call them old school or just not as tech forward in some aspects, it is hard to change the way when we've always done it this way. But as we've seen, tech is rapidly evolving, and so our sellers and marketers have to embrace that as well.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that before, ChatGPT and some of the generative, the AI is changing everything. Right now is the time to disrupt, change those thinking process, especially when it's not working, right?
You hit on a key point. You have to know when it's not working. So what does not working mean? Defining what's not working. I have multiple calls in the hospitality industry where I start to ask questions, not even hospitality, tech companies, where I start to dive in with sales leaders or leadership about how is that going? What metrics are you using? Help me understand the team's performance. And they can't answer the questions. So if we don't understand the data and the metrics, how do we make informed decisions?
Beautiful. So we're going to dive in deep here. And we have Celeste Berke-Knisely. She is a former hospitality sales hotelier.
Yes.
And a certified gap seller, by the way. Welcome to the third edition of InnSync.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here and chat about what we're seeing and how we can help individuals change and or have some takeaways or light bulb moments as to moving metrics, changing behaviors, and ultimately driving different outcomes.
And by the way, I think if we take a step back, we'll realize what we're talking about right now isn't all that crazy or revolutionary, right? Because it's the way that we probably buy products. So we're going to talk, and I love this title, by the way, Spam Glam. GM spills the tea on sales pitches gone wrong.
Yes. So
Yes.
Cory and I are, let's say, in touch with many general managers. I happen to live with one, so I definitely get a lot of examples and fodder for my own training on what lands, what doesn't, and how we can change it. So here to chat all those things.
Nice. Why do you think, and I'm sure you probably know because you've heard it from your husband, general managers are increasingly resistant about traditional sales outreach? And what does that say about the evolving nation of the landscape?
So I'd say that, first of all, general managers are completely inundated. So I think sellers who are selling into general managers, let's say you have a tech product, a tech tool, pool services, whatever it is, you have to understand the role and the day-to-day of a general manager. And I think there's a huge disconnect with not understanding who you're selling into and what their actual day-to-day looks like and or their responsibility level. So I would say right off the bat, when I hear from general managers about how much spam they get, it is because the person who is sending that or has loaded them into a sequence doesn't understand. They can't even make a decision. They're not behind their computer. They're running a shift at the front desk. If you contact them during high season, they are 12, 14 hours a day in the trenches with their team. So we have to start there with the education of what does this general manager of a insert X hotel look like? It's going to be different hotel to hotel, region to region, season to season, and management company versus independently owned.
Wonderful.
I'd say the lacking business acumen or understanding really takes off general managers because it's just noise. It's noise.
Absolutely. Can you imagine being interrupted during your day, trying to pitch a product, and the GM's worried because their bartender didn't show up before happy hour?
Or an example of, I think a Diamond member the other day called down that my husband, like something had gone wrong at check-in and it was a staff issue and how they handled it. And now they've escalated it, right? It becomes this huge thing that then they have to shift gears because guest satisfaction is one of the things that they're measured against. And if your product doesn't actually help with guest satisfaction, it detracts away from that. That's what GMs are driven towards, is making sure they stay out of the red and that their guest satisfaction scores are at or above brand. So think about, in the moment, am I robbing from someone who is dealing with an angry guest? And hotels specifically, there's not a lot of industries. They're open 24/7. So it is a revolving door. It's not like there's downtime or quiet time. It is a revolving door of people in and out and in and out and in and out. So I do think that you tick somebody off when you're, and especially if you're just repeatedly messaging them. You didn't respond to my last message. I see you didn't respond to my last message. Here's our new service brochure that we have. You're totally missing the mark from what potentially could be going on day to day in that hotel.
You hit on a couple of those examples of the words and the expressions and the responses. Maybe you could share a few more that you've heard from this GM that it irritates the living daylights, and maybe what kind of lasting impression that approach is leaving on him.
So I will tell you that there's a disconnect, and something that comes up from a very few specific vendors who are repeat violators of this is when a general manager tells you they can only buy through a vendor or like an approved procurement something, an approved Hilton, Marriott, IHG brand. And you don't listen to that as a seller. You are never going to gain the credibility and the trust and the respect of a general manager to put your name forward. So I know recently my husband, gosh, I just keep getting hit up by the same guy. And I keep responding with, we have to go through a Hilton approved vendor, which you are not. We have to go through a Hilton approved vendor. And this person will just keep messaging my husband the same thing, like totally either not listening to the message, or they have to check the activity box and keep sending the message. But now all it's done is my husband's like, even if this person becomes a Hilton approved vendor, like I probably am not going to use them. They're not even listening. So I think that one is huge, is the repeated messaging when you don't even understand the buying process that many of these hotels have to adhere to.
You hit it right on the head, and I wanted to get your take on this. Do you think, because I think some of the old mindset of some sellers is, if I can just get through, if I can just break through, if I can hit at the right time, I see a sense of irritation coming up that, and I don't know if you're feeling it now. I think the old tactics of, if I just there one more time and I can break through, I can get them on the phone, or I can sometimes show up in person. I see the backlash being much more severe now than it was maybe even pre-internet. So how do you think that's perhaps damaging, like you just said, future potential if something came up and that person came to mind, but they've already left a very bad impression on the GM, and it's making their job so much more difficult?
It happens to all of us in our day-to-day life. Think about it. When someone goes out of their way to provide value or to help you without anything in return, that leaves a lasting impression. And so I will say that disconnect that's happening when you drop into a hotel because you have to make so many visits to check it off and show your activity, and you're just dropping off your latest brochure. You're just dropping off the latest special. That is of no value to the buyer. GM, typically GMs aren't buyers in a lot of situations. They are influencers or connectors, or can put in a good word, help to create the case. So I think turning that as a seller and say, how do I keep showing up to provide value? So an example, I'm in a sales cycle with someone and it's trickling along, and they have some internal decisions to make on if they want to continue to go on this journey. And so instead of sending a note saying, hey, just checking in if you've made a decision, I said, this came to mind as a resource that may be helpful for you as you make a decision. This is the entire build out that your org would have to go through. I'm giving it to you, and it's either like a build buy situation in determining, are you willing to buy this? Are you willing to build it? It's of great value. I didn't ask for anything in return. I gave it to them. Now I've got to figure out what my next little tidbit of value is going to be. So if you are that person that is in door to door, or you're sending that email that's just checking in, I want you to ask yourself, and especially sales leadership, because I've sent you a couple of messages from high tech last year, sales leadership, where I'm like, this is very poor. And I really hope you will take the information and the feedback I'm giving you to heart as to how your sales reps are damaging their reputation and your brand by continuing to send this junk, basically spam cannon. Would I respond to this? You can ask yourself, what value am I providing to the buyer? How does this help them in their day-to-day? You can stay top of mind by never checking in, by always providing value, but that comes from knowing the problems that you solve. So if you're able to provide value on something that you've seen other GMs do to help increase their guest satisfaction, their turnover is huge, obviously, provide that. Versus, I'm just checking in to see if you got my last email where we can help you save time and save money.
Totally. Speaking of which, that's a great reframe, by the way, which is my second question to you. And you really hit it on the head, providing value. In the concept of reframe, by sellers often think of themselves first and their prospects second. And I think now we're in a day and age, if you want to pique the interest of somebody that's struggling, be top of mind in a very valuable way, is that reframe of switching that up and leading with caring about them first. How can I help them first? Because ultimately it will come back to you in some form or fashion, right? And not always having the ask and not always going for the close. And so how important is that reframe? You touched on it a little bit. Maybe you can dive in a little bit more in there.
It's the number one thing from a gap selling lens that we focus on. I'd say 99.99% of the discovery calls I have, sales calls, if you will, if you're in hospitality, when I ask, help me understand, if I went into the CRM and I opened up an opportunity, what problems would the sales rep have uncovered throughout their calls that you all help to solve? And when I start asking, if there's 3 people on the phone, 1 person, I will get 12 to 20 different answers, which leads us down this path of when your team doesn't have alignment on how you actually help your buyer. And it's messy, how does the buyer know how you help them? So I think that reframe, I always put it through a problem lens, and Keenan is really great about, Celeste, what problem does this solve? We only solve really 5 problems. So I'm always putting it through a reframe of which problems do I solve and how do I talk about that, then maybe hypothesize what it's stemming from and what could be happening in their role. So I would encourage you all to ask your team, hey, what problem is this solving? And if someone comes to you with what we hear in hospitality all the time, especially in the tech space, oh, it saves them time, it saves them money, it handles inefficiencies. I can tell you, the major players at most management companies are not buying because of those problems.
But what happens if it's going to revolutionize hospitality, Celeste?
Buzzwords. What does that mean?
Or AI.
How? Then see. If you had a genuine conversation with the general manager and you're like, hey, I'm really trying to understand. Most hotels I see have 70% turnover. This is how long employees last. Employee engagement scores are dipping down to this number. Where are you? Where do you need to be? What does really great look like for you? How can I help to support you? But if you're just talking about, we help with inefficiencies, we help you save time, we all want that, kind of. Do we want to do the work to get there? Now show me what is happening as a result right now. Now it's a different conversation. But I would say most people can't tell you, and most sellers, because if I look at some of these emails, it's all about the product. Let me help you with your roofing. Let me help you with water pressure. Hey, we have a new special for such and such. The people that sell the scents, it's always the new scent of the month. Why does that freaking matter to a hotel?
And I'm going to add a little bit different reframe on that. We're finding that also personal impact, right? You've got so many different levels of who you're trying to speak to. Ownership has a different outcome than the GM versus the person at the front desk.
Totally.
Reframe being understanding, talking about, obviously it's always, when it's ownership, it's usually about this, right? But when you're trying to cut through and talk to somebody at the property, reframing some of the messaging or the angle of what that personal impact could be. In fact, one of the things that I talked about with Nick Horgan at Amaze Insights is that I learned that revenue managers oftentimes spent Sunday evenings doing spreadsheets on their dinner table instead of having dinner with their family.
Yeah.
That's a personal impact that matters to that person that might be struggling with that. And oftentimes it's going to connect with them on a very deep emotional level.
Totally. I remember being a regional director of sales. I had 19 hotels. I'd spend countless evenings with disparate systems. Now, if you just came to me with the disparate systems, I'd be like, yeah, what about it? That's not true.
Totally.
But now the quality of my life with a newborn at home and you're spending nights, like how much time are you spending looking at all the systems? I would spend every single Sunday night putting together a report for Monday.
There you go.
Yes, like the impact of our quality of life. How is that affecting your staff? Are you seeing turnover once a year in those positions because they're completely burnt out? And now you have to go out because the industry finding talent is so bad. This is where I'm going to go with this. Now you've got to go out. You have to hire our friend, John Carpenter.
Oh, yes. John Carpenter. Yes.
You got to hire John Carpenter to fill a role, which is definitely going to cost you 20, 30% of that role. So let's say it's $100,000 role. You guys can do the math there. Now they have ramp time. They're not going to be in productivity. They're potentially going to miss. You can quantify all of that. So does your $1,000 a year tech tool actually help solve a $50,000 problem? But not if you don't ask us questions and you're just focused on, I can save you time.
Why is there so short-sightedness in this industry? And I'm by no means even a smart guy, but even the unintended consequences of offloading your acquisition to a third party and how that impacts the bottom line and EBITDA, in staff, in morale and everything else, it's all intertwined. And if your approach is understanding really what impacts that person you're trying to connect with on a personal level, and your husband, the GM, is struggling with different challenges and pitfalls that in the person at the front desk in ownership.
And I will say for anybody who's selling, especially in the hospitality tech side and even on the sales side, I'm seeing this myself. This is a true story. I set up a sequence to try to fill a class. I sent 502 emails. 502 emails. It was to 140 some people. So they basically got 3 emails each, right? Stated problem, which is low lead volume, decline in RevPAR, which we're seeing everywhere. Some others, a personal case study from someone who'd gone through my class, zero response. So I will say, I do know Hilton has now increased their spam filter. So the number of emails that are actually making it to the inbox is very low, myself included, which is why we have to cold call, which is why we have to multi-thread and social sell and ask for referrals. But if we're just sending emails into the abyss, hospitality tech, like they're not getting to the inbox.
Totally. So wait a minute, don't tip your hand here, because that's our strategy as our next call. For a vendor supplier that is struggling right now to get the attention of hoteliers, let's talk about some strategies that could help them. So what are some things you're seeing that is having some measurable impact and seeing some results, by the way?
So myself personally, especially in the hospitality industry, I doubled down on a referral network. Who do I know that can get me an in?
Yep.
I got a win from a company I trained. I saw an RFP or someone sourcing for something. And there, of course, were like 30 or 40 people tagged. I went right to VP and the director of sales. They didn't respond to me. So then I found out who I knew that was connected to those people, messaged one of those people. They made the intro. I won the piece of business. But that's what I'm seeing as far as how we have to circumnavigate what is happening is really ensuring that we build this referral partnership. And there are some really very well-connected people out there. But again, it's that give and that get. Because they had a positive experience, I knew that they would be a great referral partner for me. But you have to be able to give. I continue to nurture that. It's not like I just asked for something and I didn't give anything in return. So I think that is one way, is building a referral network. I'm going to say it, if you're not on LinkedIn and you're not planting those seeds and you're not building and giving back, you're going to have a really tough time.
Beautiful. Before that is our marketing wheelhouse. We're passionately all in on educating, building trust with the audience way before the sale. and this
Yeah.
whole notion of inbound. And I think that gets a little bit watered down, but really beginning to bring up the problems, objections, and really outcomes that your prospects are talking about right now. That goes on really early on, because we talked about this notion of 80% of what was sales is now marketing.
Yes.
So building content, video, so that ultimately when they get to your position, even when they do reach out, it says, oh my gosh, Celeste, how crazy was this time? I just saw one of your videos on LinkedIn and YouTube. I was watching it and here you are reaching out to me. Yes, I was going to schedule a call with you. How much easier is that sales process for a vendor to break through?
Totally. Yeah.
They're already familiar. They see you, your voice, you're talking about things that matter to them. And getting back to that short-sighted mindset, I think we're still in this notion of, if I can just break through to the decision maker, I can get them on a 15-minute call. That's not how we're buying products these days, folks. It's not. I found my own CRM for Lure Agency by doing my own discovery.
Yeah.
I only had to run 2 demos because it whittled it down to just a few options that met our criteria. People are going to become so used to doing their own sales journey until they need to reach out to sales, or sales reaches out to them and they go, oh my God, you were talking about exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
With the program here, big time.
And it's not enough to show up and treat social and brand, building your own brand, as a hobby. It has to be part of your full-time job, and it compounds. It takes a while, but people will start to recognize you. You will get a message, you'll get a referral, but not if you don't show up. And I think sadly on the hospitality sales side, it's because sellers have been so well fed. They have found a problem. Why do I need to build a brand when RFPs freely flow to my inbox? Now people are going to start to be let go because lead volume is down and you may lose your job. Imagine someone coming and saying, this person drives their own pipeline, they have inbound inquiries, they're such an asset here. I cannot let this person go because they bring business and they help keep our pipeline alive. And I don't know what that mindset shift is and why it's taken so long in the industry, especially in tech as well, hospitality tech. You go to people's page and they're ghosts. A potential customer or prospect is going to look you up online. And the story they will begin to talk about when they see nothing. There's no story to tell. You're not posting any content. You're not sharing value. You're not showing. That's why some of those Instagram reels do so well, because you're like, they are talking to me in their content. This is me. I'm going to buy that cream because I too have the crepey neck that this person who is my age is talking about.
So true. Celeste, have you done your own AI prompt on yourself, an audit? It's eye-opening. And it's
So I did it last night and I posted it, which whenever I post on this,
I didn't see it.
I get nothing. I get crickets. Oh, but it basically told me my 5 areas. I've been using ChatGPT for definitely over a year, writing, helping pre-call planning, like you name it. And so it gave me 5 blind spots. And one of them was really eye-opening about going in deeper with how things relate to the world of my buyer. So I thought that was really interesting. And then also,
what I'm getting to this is I'm tying it back to what you were saying, is we have to take this more seriously than a hobby, because there's latency with generative AI. You post consistently what matters to your prospects for 2 weeks, and suddenly you're going to get a personalized testimony that generative AI gives you a glowing review.
correct.
It takes a while. So I guess my drop here is that if you're a seller, you've got no choice but to jump into this game right now, because ultimately, if you're selling a 5 or 6 figure sale, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, hey, I'm about ready to sign this contract with Celeste at Gap Selling. Can I trust her? Can they help me to grow my business? What do I need to know before I sign this agreement? Everybody's going to do that. So if you're in this game, not only do you need to play by the rules, because it's going to tell you, if we found out some pretty interesting things about Glassdoor, about a company I was about ready to use, and it changed my decision to use them. Everybody's going to do this. Everybody's going to look for a personal recommendation before they sign a big contract. And if you're a big ticket item, which is a hospitality vendor, primarily, you better get in this game today or you're going to get smoked.
You got to think about it as your 401k.
Big time.
If you're not investing, you can't expect anything back. So that's on you. And then you and your team. You also, like last year, not that I have huge stats, but I think I'm at 2 million for the last year impressions on LinkedIn. Now my impressions have dipped significantly since that video thing went away where it was driving, but I did that by myself. I'm not a team of 10. I'm not a team of 5. Imagine. And that's little to no additional effort for me to put a plan together. So I guess you can't be mad at your team if you're not willing to put in the investment now for the long term to start to nurture, because you can't take a deposit out of a bank that you've never, or if you've never put in a deposit.
There's your next content topic, the 401k for sellers. I love that. It's no longer a reactionary process. You got to start early, right?
Yes. I'm all here for it. And I'm not gonna lie, like it takes work. But as I just shared with Cory this morning, when I got a booking on my meeting for a luxury resort who wants training, it works if you work it.
And before I break here, I forgot to tell you the big dramatic difference between, you had talked about the RFP culture at hotel sales, which is all inbound from third parties, and hospitality vendors getting no inbound because they don't have any, it's all outgoing.
And I think that hospitality, true hotel sellers who have branched into hospitality tech have a rude awakening because you've got to build it. You have to understand, and I've chatted with a couple of them, you can't talk about the product. You have to intimately understand what the problems are, what they're trying, what are their overall goals. And really for hotels, like it's RevPAR, come on, and guest satisfaction. And if you're not hitting on those, you're just noise. And then also knowing who do I have to get into. And if you think that you're just going to call and get the COO of a major management company, you are not. You have to know, like, how do I start? Where do I multi-thread? Who do I get into at the VP level that's going to give me time? But it has to be compelling. And we're seeing over and over again, it just hit the mark. Plus the amount that we have to do from an outbound standpoint just to get one meeting, to get one response is insane, which is why we love social selling and having that evergreen content that people can watch. You go on LinkedIn, you see a post that was from 3 weeks ago, and you're like, oh, this still is going on. It's still living.
One of our highest performing videos on YouTube, 2 years old, the secrets to selling into hotels. It's still our highest performing. We get inbound leads every month. Videos.
I love that.
It's crazy. Yeah, no, absolutely. Hey, it's been such an awesome.
Always a pleasure.
And I can't wait to pick up this conversation a little bit further down the road. So thank you so much for jumping on early with me here on Monday.
Oh, I love it. Always a pleasure. Big things are coming, huge shifts. But
yeah, that's right. Before we break, tell me what you're up to and where can people find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, Celeste Berke with an E. I do have a big old booming YouTube channel, Celeste Berke Sales, but I drop some small videos there. Primarily, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm up to building out a plan for hospitality sellers that makes access to training more manageable than having to wait for training to do in-person events. So more to come on that and how I can partner with teams. We have to build outbound engines. We have to, or people are going to steal your RevPAR who are doing it. And for hospitality tech sellers, always here to chat about gap selling if you have win rates that are below 20%, weak pipeline, low quota attainment, and really long sales cycles. That's what we handle from the gap selling methodology.
Love that. Imagine if vendors had your outbound strategy and our inbound strategy. Boom.
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. Love it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Take care.